Hi, prepare for. Great to see you again. This week we're going to be doing a maths class. Okay? A maths class. You guys know about my strong anti-maths bias. English is the best subject. That's just true. Maths is also a subject. My own maths skills you guys know about. So this might not be pretty. But let's give it a go. We're going to look at measurements, okay? There are some things we can count. They're countable nouns like eggs and apples. And there are some things that are uncountable. We have to measure them. Things like milk, we have to buy by the carton, yes? Or cheese, we have to buy by the slice. We don't buy cheese by the slice, do we? How do we buy cheese? We don't walk into the soup. Have you ever bought cheese, or do you just leave this to mum? Okay, you don't walk into the supermarket and say, "Can I have 6 slices of cheese?" And then the lady cuts off 6 slices of cheese. What do? You walk up to the counter and you say, "I will have cheese." How much? You don't ask for litres of cheese. You ask for grams or decigrams. Or if you're really hungry, kilos. I don't recommend buying kilos of cheese unless you've got lots of friends coming around or massive, weird, fondue-based plans. But whatever you're going to end up doing with the cheese, you ask for it normally in grams, okay? 2, 3, 4, 500 grams, depends how many people are at home and how much they love cheese. Milk, on the other hand, you don't buy in grams. You buy milk in litres, okay? What I'm going to do is, I'm going to give you a second to pause this, and I want you to just think of what are the units we normally use to buy things of. What can we think of as units for measuring things? Okay? You can think of metric units, you can think of imperial units. Imperial units are a thing that used to exist. Everywhere around the world, there were these folk units, these historical ways of measuring things. And some of these were based on natural phenomena, some of them were based on parts of the human body, or the imperial units that we use today, some old people still use in the UK, or people will use in America. They're based on things like corns of barley, or things like that. So it's very natural. These days we tend to use the metric system, which we can also call the normal way of measuring things, which is like litres and grams. Okay, so try and think how many metric ways do we have of measuring things and how many imperial ones can you think of, have you heard about through TV and film. Okay, take a minute and we'll see what we get. I wonder what you got. There are some things that we definitely use to measure weight. We can use kilos, grams, decigrams, milligrams, micrograms if we're weighing medicines. We can use to measure liquids, milliliters, litres, centiliters, deciliters, depending on if we're measuring volume of an engine or if we're measuring milk or juice. Which you're more likely to buy in litres or in little 200 milliliter juice boxes. Weight. Kilos. Yes? Kilos, kilogram, not kilograms. Okay, don't say kilograms. Kilograms sounds like there's this measurement that's going to come and attack people in some low budget mathematical based horror film. So try and avoid saying kilograms. Say Try and avoid saying kilograms. Say kilograms. Or kilos is fine. What are the imperial measurements we use? Did I say meters, centimeters? Yeah, millimeters for length. So for volume, we can use pints, gallons. You'll have heard people talk about gallons of gasoline in American cars, pints of, I'm going to say milk, yes, that people might drink in the UK or in America. What else have we got? Quarts, that's like 2 pints, that's nearly a litre in metric measurements. Sorry, it's okay. If any of you said bless you, that's so sweet. Okay. Yeah, it's weight. Pounds, you'll have heard Americans weigh themselves in pounds. British people, some of them still weigh themselves in stone. How many stone they weigh. There are also sorts of weird imperial measurements still around. Like 100 weight sacks and things like that. A ton. There's a metric ton, an imperial ton, and they're not the same. So an American ton and a European ton are not the same thing, which is just designed to confuse people, I think, more than anything else. Measurements, distances, we're all familiar with inches, feet, which is, I want to say about 12 inches, I'm not sure, and a yard, which is definitely 3 feet and is not quite a metre. And then you've got miles instead of kilometres for measuring that sort of thing. But then you have chains and rods and fathoms and all these other great things that we've never heard of nor care about. Okay, so there's different ways we can measure things. There's also different measurements that we can find for other things. So we measure time, yes? We measure time in seconds, or nanoseconds and seconds and minutes and hours and days and years and months and decades and centuries and millennia and whatever comes after a millennium. How do we measure volume? Not like litres, but like decibels. Yep, those are things that exist as well. Okay, here's some questions. On page 94 in your student's book, there are some questions about what units we normally use. So what units do we normally use to measure a person's height? Now, you might know how tall you are in centimetres, or sometimes metres and centimetres. A lot of British people and American people will measure themselves in feet and inches. I'm 174 centimetres. I have no idea how many feet or inches that is. We can work that out later. We worked it out last year in class and I've just totally forgotten. I'll be honest with you. A bottle of water. How big is a bottle of water? So you've got a normal, like, I'm going to say normal, but like a half-litre bottle, what would you expect from a bottle of water? You've got a big bottle, like a litre and a half bottle. Sometimes you can get a litre bottle if you need an inside thing. Maybe somewhere in the house someone's got a big 5-litre massive bottle of something. Seen in Lidl, they have like 7-litre bottles, which is probably the biggest I've seen. And in a water cooler, you get like a 20-litre bottle on the top of one of those. But yeah, we normally use hundreds of millilitres, 500 millilitres or litres to measure. You'll notice that sometimes you'll get ounces, OZ, ounce measurements on bottles. This is how Americans measure bottles of water. Yep. Interesting, isn't it? And coffee sizes, those big Starbucks coffee sizes in 20-ounce coffee, which is about a huge cup of coffee. Okay, the distance between two cities. How would you measure the distance between two cities? Normally here we'd use kilometres, yes? The Imperial unit would be miles, but normally kilometres or miles will do us for measuring the distance between two cities. So I can say I'm 1,000 kilometers away from where I came from, or I'm 1,000 miles from where I came from, or I'm 2,500 kilometers away from my mum. I know, it's very sad. It's not sad. It's fine. The weight of fruit. When you go to buy fruit at the supermarket, you don't normally go and you buy half a kilo of apples or 200 grams of apples. You normally just pick up the apples, but you have to pay for them based on their weight. Yep. So you pay, and there's the price that's always given there, and it's a price per kilo. Yeah, price per kilo. Normally, in the UK, they use pounds. In America, they sometimes use pounds, but everything's still got to be regulated against how much that is in kilos, because metric is really taking over the world, because it's a much more logical system that makes a lot of sense. Time of a long-distance flight. If you had to fly to America or Australia, well, Australia, you could measure it in days, I suppose. That's a bit of a red herring, but hours. Yes, that's how we'd measure a long flight. Now, we're going to look, if you look at the bottom of page 94, there are 4 pictures. One is of a guy kicking a football in a stadium, probably a footballer, good guess. B, we have a really tall guy who has a brilliant name, but obviously doesn't look quite the same proportions as me. We have a kind of Google Maps type, sat-nav type situation, and we have a screen with pictures on it. We're not talking about what's on the screen, we're talking about the screen itself. If you look at the top of page 94, exercise 6, there are some gaps to fill in there. So have a look at those, have a listen, and try and fill in the gaps, and I will see you after.
He's only 14, but he must be over 6 feet tall.
He's 6 feet 2 inches.
What's his name again?
Ben. 2. Hello? Let me check. Yes, we've got both the 32-inch and the 40-inch one. The 32-inch costs £299 and the 40-inch is £399. OK, you'd like the 40-inch one. Would you like us to deliver it, or will you... 3.
He looks like he's going to shoot, but he's at least 30 yards from the goal. Incredible! What an amazing shot!
4. Where do you want me to take you, Ellen?
Just to Sally's house.
What? In Notting Hill?
Yes. It's only 3 miles away, Dad.
Yes, but that's 3 miles of London traffic. It will take over an hour.
Please, Dad. Sally and I have to finish our project today.
Okay, so we've got some answers here. Ben's height is 6 feet and 2 inches. He is 6'2". Normally when we talk about people being tall, we say they're more than 2 meters. In imperial measurements, they say 6 foot, and then you're tall officially. So yeah, he's 6'2". He's a very tall guy. Obviously, nothing like me, apart from the fact he's also very good looking and amazingly clever. Okay. Number 2, the size of the TV that the customer wants is a 40-inch TV. We measure TVs diagonally, normally in inches. Sometimes we get centimetres, but like wheels we measure in inches for some reason. I don't know why. But generally we buy TVs by the inch, and that's a 40-inch TV that they're looking for. The player scored a goal from 30 yards. I don't know if that's good or not. I don't know enough about football because it's not rugby. If that was rugby, you'd expect them to be able to do that. If that's impressive in football, then that just proves that rugby's a better sport than football, I suppose. Sally's house is 3 miles. 3 miles from Ellen's house. Those are the answers for that, so you don't need to send those for me. Just make sure that you got those right and you can check those yourself. What I would like to point you towards is page 95. We have lots of information about different measurements. One of them is called a smoot, which is the coolest measurement ever. It's the second coolest measurement. We can use anything to measure things, okay? This is a popular measurement. We can say that something is a banana. So the shelf behind me, 1, 2, 3, about 3.5 bananas long, and we can measure things using that. But that's not really scientific. Every banana, obviously, is slightly different in its length and its size. But if we look at page 95, text A, it talks about this. It says 10,000 years ago, people had simple lives. I envy them. They didn't need to measure things. They just guessed the lengths of things or how long it took to walk places. However, over time we developed units. These units helped us measure distances, time, and many other things. Almost all countries now use kilometres, metres, centimetres, and millimetres to measure length and distance. And then we have some gaps. So, how many metres are there in a kilometre? 1,000. Yeah, 1,000. How many centimetres in a metre? 100. How many millimetres in a centimetre? 10. So we're losing a 0 each time we go through that. You can write those in if you want to keep that information, or you probably know this. In the UK, especially more amongst older people, but we're not going to say that because they might hear us. Australia, and not so much in Australia really, kind of growing out of it. USA definitely still. People use other units to measure length and distances. So an inch is about how much? It's 2.54 centimetres. A foot is 30.5 centimetres, like a 25 centimetre ruler, but a little bit more longer. A yard is 0.91 metres, or 91 centimetres is a yard. So it's a little shorter than a metre. And a mile is 1.61 kilometres. And I just have no idea how to do the maths related to 1.61 of kilometres of distance. Useful point. Whenever we're dealing with numbers after a decimal point, and it's a dot, not a comma, in the numbers, maths isn't the same everywhere in the world, I'm sorry, but especially in English maths is not the same as normal maths. So English maths and European maths are slightly different. You'll find that in English maths, you'll have a dot after a whole number, and then you've got decimal places. You haven't got a comma, okay? That's important. Secondly, when we have the numbers after the comma, we always read them as single digits. So here we would have 2.54, not 2.54, okay? 2.54, right? Good job, we're getting there. Okay, there are B, the rest of the page. There are other units. There are also some questions in activity 8 on page 94, and they go like this. We'll read the questions. We'll put the questions at the back of our schnoggin, mind. And then we will read through text B and answer the questions, okay? Here are the questions. Number 1, which unit could we use to describe a Ferrari? Now, we're not going to describe a Ferrari in terms of how many centimetres long it is. Although that's important information, that's not really how we talk about fast cars, is it? What's the normal way unit specifically for really fast cars? Which unit do you think a famous website is named after? Which unit is used to say how pure something is? Which unit could we use to describe a USB drive? Okay, or a stick, memory stick. Which unit is named after a person? This is the coolest unit, okay, in the whole list. Do people worry about when they're trying to lose weight? Which one's that? And which unit is very, very, very unusual? Okay, have a look at page 95 and we'll look for the answers for those questions. Okay, pause the video, read through that, answer the questions, come back, and I will share with you the answers. Okay, I hope that went well for you. I'm not going to read through the whole thing now because you've just read it and you don't need to hear it in my voice again. If there's any words that you weren't sure of, I hope you looked them up in a dictionary. Try and look things up in an English language dictionary to get an explanation of them rather than on Google Translate, okay? If you look them up in a translation dictionary, it's never quite as precise, you never get quite as much information, and it's a lot harder to learn from a translation dictionary than it is from a normal English to English description dictionary. Top tip there. Anyway, we would describe the Ferrari in terms of its horsepower, yeah? How much oomph it's got under the engine. A website, now I think there's a website called Google. I think there's a search engine. I think there's a whole massive thing called Google, which could well be named after this massive number. A carrot is not just a healthy vegetable, it's also how we tell how pure gold is, yeah? By how many carats it is. Now a memory stick you could measure in megabytes and gigabytes. My first memory stick was definitely measured in megabytes. I used to have a watch which had one built in and you could just unhook a USB cable, plug it in to a laptop. This was really cool and James Bond-esque. And I think it was like 32 gigabytes or 64 gigabytes, megabytes. This is tiny, yeah? Nowadays, if a stick's got less than 64 or 128 gigabytes, you're just going to be like, what's the point of that? These things get bigger and bigger. The unit named after a person is a smoot, and you can go and look at this, you can Google this bridge, you can Google the smoot unit. Do try and put it into Google smoot-to-meters because it is there and it is funny and it is brilliant and we should measure more things in smoots. Calories are what we need to watch when we're watching our weight, how many calories we eat and kilocalories, which sound like, you know, health risks, diabetes risks. And which one is the coolest, which one is the most interesting. Okay, that's up to you. I think a smoot is the best unit because I just want to grab a friend and use him to measure bridges. I don't know if I want to find a small friend or a tall friend or an average sized friend to measure things with, but I think that's an amazing story, amazing thing they did, and I think it's a great tradition that city's maintained. You can look at that, there's loads of good videos on that. But we have to move on because I have to set you your project work. Yay, project work! Now, you can't work together effectively on this because of the nature of social distancing. So, fortunately, you don't really need to do this project and to do it well. What you need is to think of something around your house that you could sell. Now, you don't have to sell it, just something you could sell, okay? And I want you to think about the kind of online adverts you get for things, the adverts that you might get on websites like eBay, if I can say that without breaking some rules, or Pick, or whatever they call it now, Olix, I don't know, Pick, it's still Pick, it's Pick. eBay, Amazon, wherever you buy stuff from, there are descriptions of the product. You get a picture of the product, a little written description, and the important information, things like measurements, whichever measurements are necessary. Like if we get a book, here we go, here's a book about Wilfred Owen, who was a writer of depressing war poetry, honestly, but a really interesting guy. When I ordered this book online, there's a picture of the book, obviously. there was a description of how many pages were in it, the number of pages, how many grams it weighed, probably for postage reasons or something like that, and how many centimetres it was in height, width and depth, just to buy a book, okay? And that's the information that we had on the online advert. What you guys are going to do is pick something. It doesn't have to be a book. It could be anything. It could be a memory stick. It could be something from the kitchen. It could be a lamp. It could be a television. I don't know. You be interesting. You send me an advert for something interesting so that I can not get bored reading adverts for phones every single time, okay? What I want you to do is write an advert in your notebooks or on a, be nicer on like a sheet of paper where you can like draw out the object and then put a nice description underneath. It doesn't need to be too long. You can always check online to see what these look like. If you look at the bottom of page 95 in the project box, it gives some ideas. You could use a bicycle, a TV, a computer, a car, some jewellery, some cakes, whatever. Try and think of something that's inside your house, yes? So you don't have to go out and measure things. But write a description using the appropriate units. Give a price. How much do you think you're asking for this object? And see if you can draw a picture of it. So that's your project work. That's your work. This is what I want you to take a photo of and send to me, or if you make it on the computer, on Word or PowerPoint or Publisher, whatever you make stuff in, you can send that, email that straight to me. I want a picture. I want a description. Use the right units and measurements, and I want a price, okay? Take a photo of that, send that to me, and the best ones I might put up on Instagram, or I might just, you know, keep them to have a look at and give you some feedback on. Okay, enjoy your projects, send those back into me via Messenger or by email, or the information's coming up now. Have a good week.